Stop scrolling. I want you to think about the most powerful financial weapon ever devised in human history. Not stocks, not real estate, not gold. Something older, something simpler. Something that every dynasty, every empire, and every self-made fortune from ancient Florence to modern Manhattan has quietly relied on, while the rest of the world scrambled for the next big thing. And I'm going to show you, using 500 years of actual financial history, exactly what that weapon is, and why not having it is costing you far more than you realize. Here's a number I want you to sit with for a moment. 45% of Americans cannot cover a single $1,000 emergency without going into debt. One car repair, one medical bill, one broken appliance at the wrong time, and nearly half the country is already done. Now, the standard financial commentary will tell you this is a savings problem, a discipline problem, a financial literacy problem. But here's what they never tell you. This is not a modern failure. This is an ancient trap. And for 3,000 years, the people who escaped it, the ones who built wealth that actually lasted, did not escape it by earning more, or investing smarter, or finding some secret market edge. They escaped it by mastering one quiet, unsexy, profoundly misunderstood tool. And the reason most people never talk about it is because it doesn't sound impressive at a dinner party. Let me take you back to 1494. Florence, Italy. The Medici Bank, the most powerful financial institution in the known world at that time, is collapsing. Decades of reckless lending to European monarchs, political overextension, and poor succession decisions have eroded what was once an untouchable empire. And here's the fascinating thing. The founding generation of the Medici family, Cosimo de' Medici and those who came before him, were obsessive about one principle above all others. They called it Riserva, reserve. Liquid capital held back from all operations, untouched, available at a moment's notice. When the later generations abandoned that principle, when they started deploying every florin into loans and influence and political theater, the whole thing unraveled within a generation. Now most people hear that story and think, okay, that's interesting history. What does it have to do with me? And that's where I want to slow down, because the answer is everything. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard spent years studying what actually happens to the human brain under conditions of financial scarcity. Their findings were published in a landmark paper simply titled Scarcity. And what they found should change how every single person thinks about money. Financial stress doesn't just make you anxious. It doesn't just keep you up at night. It literally reduces your cognitive capacity. It measurably shrinks the bandwidth your brain has available for thinking, planning, and deciding. When your mind is occupied with calculating whether you can afford groceries or which bill you're going to pay late this month or whether a car repair will wipe out your account, you have less mental space for everything else. The promotion you should be positioning yourself for, the health issue you keep putting off, the investment you know you should be making. All of it gets pushed to the periphery while your brain burns energy just trying to survive the current week. The researchers called this tunneling. Your focus narrows to the immediate problem. Everything outside that tunnel fades into background noise. And here's the critical insight. This isn't a character flaw. It isn't weakness or laziness or lack of ambition. It is a documented, measurable, neurological effect of financial pressure on the human brain. Now, most people assume the solution is earning more. Get a raise. Find a side hustle. Land a better job. And yes, income matters. But the research tells a more nuanced story, because the families that survived Weimar Germany's hyperinflation in 1923, when people were literally burning paper money for heat because it cost less than firewood, were not necessarily the highest earners. They were the ones who had maintained liquid reserves, cash that wasn't tied to the system that was collapsing around them. The merchants who came out of the Dutch financial crisis of 1763 stronger than they went in, same pattern. The American industrialists who not only survived the 1929 crash, but used it as a launch pad, same pattern. Every single time, across 5 centuries of economic upheaval, the variable that separated those who were destroyed from those who thrived was not talent, not connections, not even luck. It was liquidity, cash reserves. That's the weapon. Not gold, not stocks, not property. Boring, accessible, liquid cash, sitting in an account, not doing anything dramatic. And I want to show you the 4 ways this one thing reshapes every other area of your financial life. The first is cognitive. When you have 6 months of expenses in a stable, accessible account, the constant background noise of financial anxiety goes quiet. The tunneling effect the Princeton researchers identified, it reverses. You get your mental bandwidth back. You start making decisions from strategy instead of survival. The Medici founders understood this intuitively centuries before the research existed. Riserva wasn't just financial protection, it was psychological armor. The second is negotiating power, and this one has a direct dollar value attached to it. Researchers at UC San Diego analyzed millions of property transactions and found that all cash buyers pay an average of 10% less than buyers who need mortgage financing. In 2025, that discount sits at around 9%. On a median American home priced at roughly $410,000, that's nearly $37,000 in savings, not because of a special deal or a clever trick, but simply because you don't need anyone's approval to buy. The seller knows you can close. The deal is certain, and certainty has always commanded a premium. Now apply that logic far beyond property. Think about salary negotiations. When you have 8 months of expenses in the bank and your employer lowballs your raise, you can push back calmly, professionally, and without panic. You can afford to wait. You can afford to walk. The person sitting across the table with no savings negotiates from a completely different psychology. They need this. They need it now. And over a 10-year career, that difference in negotiating posture, identical skills, identical experience, identical work ethic, can compound into 6 figures of cumulative earnings. The third effect is what economists call eliminating the poverty premium. This is the hidden tax that most people never notice, but it's relentless. Without cash reserves, you can't buy in bulk when something goes on sale because you don't have the float. So you pay more per unit, week after week. You pay monthly insurance premiums instead of annual ones, which typically carry a 5 to 15% discount you never see. You can't maintain your car proactively, so small problems become emergency repairs at emergency prices. You can't take advantage of your employer's full 401k match because the cash flow disruption feels too risky. Every one of these is a small, quiet loss. Add them up across a year, and the annual cost of being cash poor easily reaches into the thousands. The less money you have, the more you pay for the same life. Cash reserves don't just protect you, they stop the daily bleeding. And the fourth, and this is the one that history teaches most powerfully, is opportunity capture. March 2020, the global market drops 30% in a matter of weeks. For most people, it's a disaster. For anyone holding reserves above their emergency threshold, it's a historic buying window. This pattern has repeated in every financial crisis in recorded history. The people who suffered were the ones forced to sell. The people who prospered were the ones who could buy. J.P. Morgan during the Panic of 1907, Andrew Carnegie in the aftermath of the 1893 Depression, Warren Buffett in 2008, and again in 2020. 3 different centuries, the same playbook. Keep powder dry. Move decisively when others can't. Cash doesn't just protect you from bad events. It converts bad events into advantages. Now, I want to be straight with you here, because I think a lot of financial content does people a disservice by making this sound either impossibly simple or impossibly hard. It's neither. The target is 3 to 6 months of your actual monthly expenses, not income, expenses. If you spend $4,000 a month, you're aiming for $12,000 to $24,000 in a separate, dedicated account that you do not touch for anything other than a genuine emergency. Start with a smaller goal if you need to. $1,000. That single step stops the cycle of overdraft fees, credit card interest, and payday loans for most people. It's a bigger psychological shift than the number suggests. Then automate it. Set up a recurring transfer on the same day your paycheck lands. It doesn't matter if it's $200 a month or $500. What matters is that it's consistent and it's automatic, because willpower is a finite resource, and systems outlast motivation every single time. Put the money in a high-yield savings account. Right now, these accounts are paying around 4 to 5% annually, more than 10 times the national average. On $20,000, that's the difference between earning $78 a year and earning close to $1,000. The money is still liquid, still accessible within a day or two, still federally insured. You're simply getting paid for holding it, and keep it at a separate bank from your everyday account. No linked debit card, not because you can't trust yourself, but because friction is your friend. When the money requires a deliberate transfer and a 2-day wait, most impulse decisions dissolve before they happen. Define what counts as an emergency and write it down. A genuine emergency threatens your health, your housing, or your employment. A flash sale does not. A new gadget does not. Boredom is not a financial emergency. Clear rules prevent the slow erosion of your cushion through 1,000 reasonable-sounding exceptions. The timeline varies. Some people reach 6 months in a year. Others take 3. Neither is wrong. What matters is the direction. Every month you add to this cushion, your options expand and your stress contracts. At some point in the process, and this is hard to describe until you experience it yourself, something shifts. You stop operating from scarcity. You start operating from choice. That shift is worth more than any single investment you'll ever make. Here's the thing about cash that never makes headlines. It doesn't compound dramatically. It doesn't generate stories about 10-to-1 returns. It won't make you rich on its own. But for 3,000 years of recorded financial history, it has been the single most consistent differentiator between wealth that lasts and wealth that disappears. The Medici didn't dominate Renaissance finance because they took the biggest risks. They dominated because when everyone else was collapsing, they could still move, they could still lend, they could still negotiate from a position of strength while their competitors were on their knees. That is the lesson history keeps repeating. and that modern financial culture keeps glossing over because it doesn't sell courses or generate clicks. Cash is not lazy money. Cash is loaded ammunition. It's the thing that turns every other financial decision you make, every negotiation, every investment, every career move, into something you can approach from a position of actual freedom instead of quiet desperation. And what we've covered today is really just the foundation. Because the next question, the one the Medici asked, the one Rockefeller asked, the one every serious wealth builder eventually gets to, is, once the foundation is solid, what do you build on top of it? Where did the great merchant families of history actually deploy their reserves? What were the specific asset classes, the structures, the timing principles they used to convert liquidity into compounding, lasting wealth? And what do today's wealthiest families do with their cash that nobody talks about in mainstream financial media? That's exactly what we're going to dig into in the next video on smart money history. But before I go, I want to ask you something directly. If you've been finding value in what we're building here, the research, the history, the honest analysis that doesn't try to sell you anything, the single best way you can support this channel is by joining our YouTube members community. It costs less than a coffee. It tells the algorithm that this kind of content is worth recommending to more people, and it directly encourages us to keep going deeper, keep researching, and keep bringing you the stories and frameworks that most financial channels never touch. Because here's the thing, understanding money isn't just about what's happening right now. It's about recognizing the patterns that have repeated across every empire, every crisis, every reinvention of wealth for centuries. And when you finally see those patterns clearly, smart money was always history.